"I didn't mean to start a war," Sarah whispers, her voice shaking as she stands on a cliff, the desert wind tugging at her hair. Shadows move in the twilight. And there he is, Swift Deer, a Lakota warrior, his bow drawn tight, eyes locked on her. Far off, White Cloud, a Navajo elder, watches, his face heavy with secrets. What led Sarah to this moment, trapped between two tribes ready to fight? And what truth will she uncover to stop the bloodshed? Stick around to find out. Step into the American Southwest in 1880. Endless deserts stretch under a blazing sun, rugged mountains rise in the distance, and a restless wind hums through valleys dotted with Lakota teepees and Navajo hogans. This is a land of beauty and tension where worlds collide. Meet Sarah Carter, a 19-year-old with bright eyes and a curious heart. She lives with her uncle, James Carter, at a dusty trading post, helping him sort goods under the hot sun. James is a hard man, his voice rough, his mind set on profit. To him, the Lakota and Navajo are just barriers to his wealth, and Sarah feels a knot in her stomach every time he snaps at them. Something about it doesn't sit right with her. One morning, a young Lakota warrior named Swift Deer rides up to trade. His posture is proud, his gaze sharp, like he's always ready to protect his people. Sarah hands him blankets, and their eyes meet for a moment. He's cautious, but her small smile catches him off guard. There's a spark, a hint that she's different, and he leaves with more than just supplies, wondering about this strange girl. Days later, Sarah wanders near a canyon and finds White Cloud, a Navajo elder with hands gentle as the breeze. He's kneeling by an injured bird, whispering to it softly. She watches, captivated, as he binds its wing. He looks up and shares a story, his voice warm like a fire. He says, "The wind carries messages of peace, if only we listen." Sarah feels those words settle deep inside her. In these quiet moments, Sarah starts to see a world beyond her uncle's greed. She's drawn to the Lakota's strength and the Navajo's wisdom, feeling like she could bridge their worlds, but the path ahead isn't easy, and she's about to learn just how wide that gap really is. The sun climbs high air over the southwest, and trouble brews like a storm on the horizon. James Carter grows bolder at the trading post, his voice sharp as he talks of wealth. He wants the Lakota and Navajo to sell their lands for a railroad, a ribbon of steel to slice through their homes. He meets with tribal leaders, offering beads and blankets, but his smile is cold, and his words carry a threat. The Lakota turn away, their faces hard with pride. The Navajo stand silent, their eyes like stone. Anger simmers in both camps, and whispers of defiance ripple through the teepees and hogans. Sarah watches it all unfold, her heart heavy. She sweeps the trading post porch, but her mind is elsewhere. One evening, she finds Swift Deer by a dry creek bed, checking his horse's hooves. His shoulders are tense, his jaw tight. He spots her and frowns. He says her uncle's plans spell danger for his people, that she should keep her distance. His words sting, but Sarah steps closer, her voice soft yet firm. She asks him to trust her, to believe she wants no part of her uncle's schemes. Swift Deer hesitates, his dark eyes searching hers. He says nothing more, but as he rides off, Sarah feels a flicker of hope, like a spark in the dusk. Later, she seeks out White Cloud, finding him under a cottonwood tree, grinding herbs into powder. His hands move with care, and his presence calms her racing thoughts. She asks about his people, about the land they cherish. White Cloud's voice is steady, like a river over smooth stones. He speaks of the Navajo way, of balance in all things. He says the land speaks if you listen, that it holds stories older than any man. Sarah kneels beside him, her fingers tracing the earth. For the first time she feels its pulse, a quiet rhythm that shifts how she sees the world. But Sarah's heart pulls her in two directions. James is her only family, the man who raised her after her parents passed. She wants to please him, to ease the lines on his weathered face. Yet every harsh word he spits at the tribes makes her stomach twist. She starts slipping away at dawn, meeting swift deer by the creek, or sitting with White Cloud under the stars. From them, she learns of courage and roots deep as the mountains. Swift Deer tells her of Lakota hunts, of honoring every creature taken. White Cloud shares tales of the stars guiding his people home. Each word weaves a thread in Sarah's heart, binding her to their ways. Meanwhile, trouble grows between the tribes. Lakota scouts and Navajo riders meet at a sacred spring, its waters clear as glass. They argue, voices rising like flames. The Lakota claim the Navajo spoke with James, plotting to sell the spring. The Navajo swear the Lakota took bribes to let the railroad pass. Fists clench, and a knife flashes in the sunlight. No blood spills that day, but the air grows thick with distrust. Sarah hears the news from a trader's gossip and feels a chill. The spring is life to both tribes, a gift from the earth. If they fight over it, everything could burn. Sarah stands at a crossroads, caught between the world she knows and the one she's beginning to love. She hides her visits from James, but his eyes narrow when she lingers too long outside. Swift Deer watches her with caution, unsure if she's friend or foe. White Cloud offers wisdom, but even he cannot stop the clash that's coming. The land itself seems to hold its breath, waiting for Sarah to choose a side. What she does next will test her heart and shape the fate of those around her. The desert nights grow colder, and Sarah's world turns upside down. One evening, while James is away bartering, she tidies his cluttered desk at the trading post. Her fingers brush against a folded paper tucked beneath a ledger. Curiosity pulls her closer. She unfolds it, and her breath catches. The letter, scrawled in James's jagged handwriting, lays out a plan darker than she ever imagined. He's been slipping poison into the sacred spring, drop by drop, to sicken the water. His goal is cruel and clear. Make the Lakota and Navajo think each other's to blame, let them fight, and drive them off the land for good. Sarah's hands shake as she reads. The uncle she trusted, the man who raised her, has betrayed not just the tribes, but everything she's come to believe in. Her heart pounds with shock, then burns with resolve. She can't stay silent. The spring is life, a gift shared by the Lakota and Navajo, and James is stealing it. She stuffs the letter into her pocket, grabs a shawl, and slips out into the night. Her boots crunch on the sandy path as she saddles her horse, her mind racing. She has to find Swift Deer and White Cloud. They need to know the truth, even if it means facing their anger or losing her uncle forever. The stars above feel distant, but they light her way as she rides toward the Lakota camp, determination pushing her forward. The desert has other plans. A sandstorm brews, sudden and fierce. Wind howls, flinging grit into her eyes. Her horse stumbles, and Sarah clings tight, her shawl whipping around her. Dust chokes her throat, and for a moment fear creeps in. She could turn back, hide the letter, pretend she never saw it. But the thought of the spring, its clear water turning foul, keeps her moving. She whispers to her horse, urging it on, and presses through the storm. Her body aches, her vision blurs, but she refuses to stop. The truth is heavier than the wind, and she carries it like a promise. At last the storm eases, and the Lakota camp comes into view. Teepees glow faintly under moonlight, and a sentry spots her, calling out. Swift Deer steps from the shadows, his face guarded. Sarah dismounts, her legs unsteady, and pulls the letter from her pocket. Her voice trembles as she explains James's plan, the poison, the lies meant to tear the tribes apart. Swift Deer's eyes narrow as he reads the paper, his fingers tightening around it. He believes her, but his voice is low, edged with doubt. He says the Navajo won't trust this, not from a settler's kin. Still, he agrees to face James, to demand answers. He looks at Sarah, seeing her exhaustion, her courage, and something shifts in his gaze, like a wall starting to crack. Sarah takes a deep breath, knowing her work isn't done. The Navajo camp lies miles away, and White Cloud's wisdom is her only hope to mend this rift. She mounts her horse again, the letter tucked close to her heart. Swift Deer watches her go, his silhouette sharp against the dawn. The path ahead is uncertain, and the weight of her choice presses hard. Can she convince two tribes divided by mistrust to stand together? Or will her uncle's betrayal spark a fire no one can stop? Sarah rides on, the desert vast around her, carrying a truth that could change everything. The dawn breaks over the desert, painting the sky with streaks of gold and pink. Sarah rides hard, leading Swift Deer toward the Navajo camp. Dust clings to her clothes, but her eyes burn with purpose. They reach the hogans as the morning stirs, and White Cloud steps forward, his face calm but searching. Sarah hands him the letter, her voice steady as she explains James's betrayal. The poison seeping into the sacred spring, the lies meant to pit Lakota against Navajo. White Cloud's fingers trace the paper, his silence heavy. Then he nods, slow and sure, like a mountain settling. He calls for a meeting at the spring, where truth will face the light. Swift Deer glances at Sarah, his expression torn between hope and doubt, but he follows her lead. By midday, the spring sparkles under the sun, its waters deceptively clear. Lakota and Navajo gather on opposite banks, their voices low, their hands resting on knives and bows. Sarah stands in the middle, the letter clutched tight. Her heart races, but she lifts her chin and speaks. She tells them of her uncle's greed, how he poisoned their lifeline to break their spirits. She holds up the letter, her words raw and clear, begging them to see the real enemy isn't each other. The Lakota murmur, the Navajo shift, and for a moment eyes meet across the water, weighing her truth. Swift Deer steps beside her, his presence solid, while White Cloud watches, his gaze like a beacon. Then hooves thunder in the distance. James rides in with a band of hired men, their faces hard, rifles glinting. He shouts that the tribes must leave or face blood. His eyes lock on Sarah, wide with fury at her betrayal. The air snaps tight, and chaos erupts. A Lakota arrow flies, a Navajo rider charges, and James's men fire into the dust. Shouts and steel clash, the spring's edge turning to a whirlwind of anger. Sarah's breath catches as she sees Swift Deer dodge a bullet, his bowstring taut. A Navajo warrior stumbles, blood on his arm. She wants to run, to hide, but something deeper holds her fast. Sarah steps into the heart of the fight, her voice rising above the din. She shouts for peace, her words desperate but fierce, pleading for them to stop before the spring runs red. A bullet grazes the ground near her feet, and Swift Deer leaps forward, pulling her behind him, his arm strong, as he nocks an arrow. Across the water, White Cloud climbs a boulder, his white hair catching the light. He raises his staff high, his voice deep and commanding, calling to the wind as if it were an old friend. The air shifts, a gust swirling through the chaos, carrying his words of balance, of life tied to the earth. The Navajo pause, then the Lakota, their weapons lowering just a fraction. Sarah looks to James, her uncle's face twisted with rage. She steps out from Swift Deer's shield, her hands empty, but her heart full. She speaks to him alone, soft but unshaken, saying he can still choose right, that greed doesn't have to win. The fight slows, eyes turning to her, a girl standing where warriors falter. Swift Deer's bow stays ready, but his gaze softens. White Cloud lowers his staff, the wind easing to a whisper. The spring reflects them all, a fragile moment hanging between ruin and redemption, waiting for what comes next. The dust settles around the sacred spring, and a heavy silence falls. The wind howls, sharp and wild, as if carrying the earth's own voice. Swift Deer stands tall, his bow still in hand, eyes locked on James. White Cloud steps down from the boulder, his staff steady, his presence grounding the moment. Sarah's words hang in the air, her plea for peace echoing in every heart. James's men lower their rifles, their faces uncertain. James himself stares at Sarah, his shoulders slumping, the fire in his eyes fading. Her courage, raw and unshaken, cuts deeper than any blade. He lets his weapon fall to the ground, its thud swallowed by the wind. He says nothing, but his bowed head speaks of defeat, not by force, but by truth. Swift Deer turns to the Lakota, his voice firm, calling for calm. White Cloud speaks to the Navajo, his words soft but clear, urging them to see the path ahead. The warriors step back, their hands easing from knives and bows. Sarah watches, her chest tight, as the two tribes face each other across the spring. No shouts, no threats, just a quiet understanding growing like a seed. White Cloud kneels by the water, dipping his fingers into its depths, and declares it must be cleansed, protected. Swift Deer nods, pledging the Lakota's strength to the task. Together they agree to guard the spring as one, a bond forged not in blood, but in shared purpose. They look to Sarah, their eyes warm with respect. Swift Deer calls her a friend, his voice steady. White Cloud smiles, saying she carries the wind's truth. Sarah's heart swells, but an ache lingers beneath it. She glances at James, who meets her gaze for the first time without anger. He speaks low, promising to leave the land untouched, to walk away from his plans. His voice cracks, and Sarah sees a flicker of the man who once held her hand as a child. She nods, forgiving not for him, but for herself, to let go of the weight she's carried. The tribes begin to disperse, Lakota and Navajo moving as neighbors, their steps lighter. Swift Deer lingers a moment, his hand brushing Sarah's arm, a silent thank you. White Cloud places a small stone in her palm, smooth and warm, saying it holds the spring spirit. She clutches it, feeling its strength. As the sun dips low, casting long shadows over the desert, Sarah stands alone by the spring. Swift Deer rides back to his people, his silhouette sharp against the horizon. White Cloud walks toward the Hogans, his staff tapping the earth. Sarah smiles, knowing she's helped them find peace, that the spring will flow clean again. But tears glisten in her eyes. This land isn't her home, not truly. She's changed, no longer the girl bound to her uncle's world, but she can't stay. Her path lies elsewhere, to rebuild a life shaped by what she's learned. She mounts her horse, the stone heavy in her pocket, and rides into the dusk. The wind follows, soft now, carrying whispers of peace born from one heart's truth.